The clay felt cold and unforgiving beneath Elena's hands, but she smiled anyway as she demonstrated the proper technique for centering on the wheel to her Tuesday night class. "The key is to trust the process," she said, her voice carrying over the hum of 6 pottery wheels in the converted warehouse studio. "If you fight the clay, it fights back. If you work with it, magic happens." She had been teaching pottery classes for 3 years now, ever since she lost her job as a high school art teacher during budget cuts. The night classes at Westside Community Arts Center paid barely enough to cover her rent in the small apartment above her sister's garage. But there was something about watching complete strangers discover their creative spark that made the financial struggle worthwhile. Tonight's beginner class had the usual mix of retirees looking for hobbies, young couples on date night, and one man who seemed distinctly out of place. He sat at the wheel farthest from her demonstration area, his broad shoulders hunched over his lump of clay with an intensity that seemed almost comical for a pottery class. His dark hair fell across his forehead as he frowned at his creation, or rather, the misshapen blob that refused to cooperate. Elena made her rounds, stopping first at Mrs. Patterson's wheel, where the elderly woman had managed to create something resembling a bowl. "Beautiful work," Elena encouraged. "You have steady hands." She moved through the class, offering guidance and gentle corrections, until she reached the intense man in the corner. Up close, she noticed details she had missed during her initial overview. He wore an expensive watch, the kind that probably cost more than her car. His jeans were designer, though splattered with clay now. His hands, large and capable, seemed more suited to boardrooms than pottery wheels. "Having trouble?" she asked gently. He looked up, and she found herself momentarily caught by his eyes. They were a striking blue-gray, like storm clouds over the ocean. A flush crept up his neck, visible even in the warm lighting of the studio. "I'm not very good at this," he admitted. His voice was deep, with a slight roughness that suggested either exhaustion or too much coffee. "You're trying to force it," Elena observed, watching his technique. "Here, may I?" She positioned herself beside him, not quite touching but close enough to guide. "Place your hands like this. Feel the clay spinning. It has its own rhythm. You need to find it." He adjusted his grip, following her instructions. His jaw tightened with concentration, a muscle ticking near his ear. For someone taking a casual pottery class, he seemed remarkably determined to succeed. "That's better," Elena said as the clay began to respond, rising slightly under his palms. "What's your name? I don't think you introduced yourself at the start of class." "Marcus," he said, not taking his eyes off the clay. "Marcus Reed." "Well, Marcus, you're doing much better now. Remember, pottery is about patience. You can't rush art." She moved on to help the next student, but she felt his gaze follow her across the room. It wasn't creepy or uncomfortable, just noticeable, like standing near a warm fire on a cold night. The class ended at 9, and Elena began her usual routine of cleaning up while students packed their things. Most left quickly, eager to return to their lives. Marcus lingered, carefully covering his somewhat improved bowl with plastic wrap to prevent it from drying out before next week's session. "Will you be back next Tuesday?" Elena asked, wiping down her demonstration wheel. "Definitely," Marcus replied. "I think I need a lot more practice," she laughed. "Everyone starts somewhere. I once made a vase that looked like it had been attacked by a very angry cat." His lips curved into a smile, transforming his serious face into something warmer. "I find that hard to believe. You make it look effortless. Trust me, I've had plenty of disasters. That's how you learn." He helped her stack chairs without being asked, moving with an efficiency that suggested he was used to physical work despite his clearly affluent appearance. When everything was cleaned and locked up, they walked out together into the cool October night. "You teach other classes?" Marcus asked as Elena locked the studio door. "Wednesday nights and Saturday mornings," she replied. "Why, thinking of becoming a pottery enthusiast?" "Maybe," he said, and there was something in his tone that made her glance at him curiously. They stood in the parking lot for a moment, the streetlight casting long shadows between them. Elena fumbled with her keys, suddenly aware of how isolated the arts center was at night, how empty the surrounding streets became after the nearby businesses closed. "Well, good night, Marcus. See you next week." "Good night, Elena." She drove home in her aging Honda Civic, replaying the evening in her mind. Something about Marcus Reed intrigued her, though she couldn't quite pinpoint what. Maybe it was the contrast between his obvious wealth and his willingness to sit in a basement studio covered in clay. Maybe it was the way he looked at her when she demonstrated techniques, like she was teaching him the secrets of the universe, instead of how to make a simple bowl. Her sister Carmen was still awake when Elena climbed the external stairs to her apartment, visible through the kitchen window of the main house. Carmen knocked on her window and gestured for Elena to come down. With a sigh, Elena descended and let herself in through the back door. "How was class?" Carmen asked, pouring 2 glasses of wine without asking if Elena wanted one. "Fine. The usual group, plus one new guy who seems way too fancy for community pottery." Carmen's eyes lit up with interest. She had been trying to set Elena up on dates for the past year, ever since Elena's relationship with David the investment banker had imploded spectacularly. "Fancy how? Expensive watch, designer clothes, looks like he should be in a cologne commercial." But he seemed genuinely interested in learning. "Single, Carmen. I didn't interrogate him about his relationship status. He's a student." "A student who looks like a cologne model," Carmen pointed out. "You're allowed to notice these things, you know. You're only 28. You're not dead." Elena accepted the wine and settled onto a kitchen stool. "I notice things. I just don't act on them. There's a difference. Because of David. Because mixing teaching and personal life is messy. Remember when I dated that parent from school? That's partly why I lost my job." "Well, not officially, but it didn't help." Carmen made a dismissive sound. "That was completely different and you know it. David was manipulative and his kid wasn't even in your class. This is a community pottery course with adults. If a hot guy wants to learn to make bowls, you're allowed to appreciate that." "I'm going home now," Elena announced, finishing her wine in 2 long swallows. "Thanks for the beverage and unsolicited romantic advice." "You love my advice," Carmen called after her. "You just won't admit it." The following Tuesday arrived faster than Elena expected. She spent the day working at the art supply store downtown, a mind-numbing job that consisted mainly of helping confused customers find specific paint colors and restocking shelves. By the time her shift ended at 5, she had just enough time to grab dinner before heading to the studio. Marcus arrived early, carrying a travel mug of coffee and wearing another expensive outfit that would inevitably be ruined by clay. He had brought a sketchbook, Elena noticed, filled with drawings of pottery forms and handwritten notes. "You've been studying," she observed as students filed in and found their wheels. He looked almost embarrassed. "I watched some videos online. I wanted to understand the theory better." "That's dedication for a hobby class." "I believe in committing fully to things I choose to do," Marcus said, and there was a weight to his words that suggested layers beneath the surface. The class began, and Elena demonstrated how to create a cylinder, the foundation for most pottery forms. She lost herself in the teaching, the familiar rhythm of explanation and demonstration. Pottery had always been her escape, the one thing that quieted the constant worry about money and career, and whether she was wasting her life in dead-end jobs. When she reached Marcus's wheel, she found him struggling with the same issue as last week. His clay wobbled unevenly, refusing to center despite his obvious effort. "You're too tense," Elena said. She could see the frustration in the set of his shoulders. "Here, try this." Without thinking, she stepped behind him and placed her hands over his on the clay. It was a technique she used often with struggling students, but this time she felt the warmth of his skin through the slip of wet clay, the solid strength of his arms beneath his rolled-up sleeves. "Feel that?" she said softly, her voice close to his ear. "The clay wants to spin true. You just have to guide it gently. Stop fighting for control." Marcus took a breath, and she felt his shoulders relax slightly. The clay began to respond, rising into a wobbly but recognizable cylinder. "There," Elena said, stepping back quickly, suddenly aware of how intimate the moment had been. "You did it." He turned to look at her, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement, perhaps, of the charged moment they had just shared. But the class continued around them, and Elena moved on to the next student, her heart beating slightly faster than usual. After class, Marcus again stayed to help clean up. It was becoming a pattern, one that Elena didn't discourage. They worked in comfortable silence, the easy quiet of two people who didn't need to fill every moment with conversation. "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said as they finished wiping down the wheels. "Sure." "Why pottery? What made you choose this?" Elena paused, considering her answer. Most people didn't ask about her motivations, content to see her as simply the pottery teacher, a role without depth or history. "I had a teacher in college who said that pottery was about transformation," she began. "You take earth, one of the most basic elements, and you shape it into something functional, beautiful, meaningful. I like that idea, that you could take something raw and ordinary and turn it into something extraordinary." Marcus listened with complete attention, his gray-blue eyes never leaving her face. "And do you create extraordinary things?" "Sometimes," Elena admitted. "When I have time. Mostly I teach now, but I still love it. There's something magical about the process, even after all these years." "I'd like to see your work sometime," Marcus said. "If you'd be willing to show me." It was a simple request, but Elena felt herself hesitate. Her pottery was personal, an expression of the parts of herself she kept hidden from the world. Showing her work to Marcus felt like opening a door she usually kept locked. "Maybe," she said finally. "Once you've mastered the basics," he smiled. "Then I'll have to work harder." Over the following weeks, Marcus became a fixture in Elena's Tuesday night class. He improved steadily, his natural determination translating into competent if not exceptional pottery skills. But Elena began to notice something curious. For someone so focused on improvement, Marcus spent an unusual amount of time watching her rather than his own work. His eyes followed her around the room as she helped other students. When she demonstrated techniques, he seemed more interested in her hands, her face, her expressions, than in the actual pottery being created. She told herself she was imagining things. But the awareness of his attention created a constant hum of nervous energy whenever she taught on Tuesday nights. She found herself choosing her outfits more carefully, wearing her dark hair down instead of in its usual messy bun, applying a touch more makeup than she did for other classes. Carmen noticed the change immediately. "So, has Cologne model asked you out yet? His name is Marcus, and no, he's just a dedicated student. A dedicated student who stays late every week to help you clean up. Elena, he's interested. You don't know that. I'm married, not blind. Trust me, that man is taking pottery classes for one reason, and it's not because he has a burning passion for ceramic art." Elena wanted to dismiss her sister's observations, but deep down, she suspected Carmen was right. The real question was what to do about it. Marcus hadn't actually made any moves beyond being helpful and attentive. Maybe he was just friendly. Maybe she was projecting her own growing attraction onto innocent behavior. The situation clarified itself in early November when Marcus showed up to class with a cut across his knuckles, barely concealed by a hastily applied bandage. "What happened?" Elena asked during her rounds. "Stupid accident at work," Marcus said, keeping his injured hand away from the clay. "Nothing serious. You should probably skip tonight. Clay and open wounds don't mix." "I'm fine," he insisted, but Elena noticed him wincing when he tried to center his clay. She made a decision. "Come on, let's get that properly cleaned at least." She led him to the small office at the back of the studio, where they kept a first aid kit for minor mishaps. Marcus sat on the edge of the desk while Elena unwrapped his makeshift bandage, revealing a nasty cut across 3 knuckles. "Marcus, this needs stitches," she said, alarmed. "When did this happen?" "This morning. I didn't have time to deal with it." "Didn't have time? What kind of work do you do that you can't take an hour for medical attention?" He hesitated, and Elena sensed she had touched on something he had been deliberately avoiding. "I run a company." "It's been a busy few months." "What kind of company?" "Commercial real estate development. We're in the middle of several major projects." Elena processed this information while cleaning his wound with antiseptic. Commercial real estate development. That explained the expensive clothes, the watch, the aura of controlled intensity he carried with him. It also raised questions about why someone who ran a development company was taking beginner pottery classes on Tuesday nights. "This really needs stitches," she repeated. "I'm going to drive you to urgent care. Elena, you have a class to teach. Mrs. Patterson can supervise for an hour. They're all working on their own projects anyway. Come on." She didn't give him room to argue, informing the class of the minor emergency and promising to return soon. Marcus followed her to her car, looking bemused by her take-charge attitude. The urgent care clinic was quiet on a Tuesday evening. While Marcus filled out paperwork, Elena texted Carmen that she might be late getting home. Her sister's response was immediate and predictable. "Is Cologne model okay?" "Are you playing nurse? Get it, girl." Elena rolled her eyes and pocketed her phone. "You didn't have to do this," Marcus said when he returned from getting 5 stitches. "But thank you, I appreciate it." "You can't let injuries go untreated," Elena replied. "Especially hand injuries. You need your hands." They sat in her car in the parking lot, neither of them moving to leave. Rain had started falling, creating a cocoon of sound around them. "Can I ask you something now?" Elena said. "Fair trade. Why are you really taking pottery classes? And don't say it's to learn a new hobby. People who run development companies don't usually have time for weekly pottery sessions." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. The rain drummed steadily on the roof. Finally, he spoke. "I saw you, about 2 months before I signed up for the class. You were teaching a Saturday morning session, and I was walking past the arts center on my way to a site inspection nearby. The window was open, and I could hear you laughing with your students. I stopped and watched for a few minutes." Elena's breath caught. "You've been watching me." "That sounds creepier than I meant it," Marcus said quickly. "I just meant that you seemed so alive, so genuinely happy. I work 80-hour weeks. I eat lunch at my desk. I haven't laughed like that in years. I wanted to know what it felt like to be in that space, to experience whatever made you so joyful. So you signed up for pottery." "I signed up for pottery. I told myself it was about learning a new skill, about balancing my life better. But if I'm being honest, I kept coming back because of you. The way you talk about clay like it's magic. The way you encourage people who have no talent. The way your whole face lights up when someone makes their first successful bowl. He turned to look at her. I know that probably makes you uncomfortable. I'm sorry if I've overstepped. Elena's mind raced. She should be uncomfortable. She should set professional boundaries. She should do a lot of things that weren't what she actually wanted to do. I noticed you watching me, she admitted. I thought I was imagining it. You weren't. Marcus, I need to ask. Are you doing this because you're interested in me, or because I'm some kind of project, a way to rebel against your corporate life? His expression turned serious. I'm doing this because from the moment I saw you, I haven't been able to think about much else. You're not a project. You're the first real thing in my life in longer than I care to admit. The rain continued falling. Somewhere in the distance, a car alarm went off and then stopped. Elena made a choice. I finished teaching at 9 on Wednesdays, she said. There's a diner 2 blocks from the arts center. They make terrible coffee but excellent pie. Are you asking me on a date? I'm suggesting we continue this conversation in a place that serves food. You can call it whatever you want. Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that transformed his entire face. I'll be there at 9 tomorrow. Elena returned to the studio to find her class happily working on their projects under Mrs. Patterson's watchful supervision. Marcus's wheel sat empty, his half-formed vase covered with plastic. She felt giddy and terrified in equal measure. Carmen's reaction that night was predictably enthusiastic. Finally, I thought you were going to dance around each other forever. It's just coffee and pie. Don't plan the wedding yet. Coffee and pie with a hot real estate developer who's been taking pottery classes just to be near you. Elena, this is literally the plot of a romance novel. My life is not a romance novel. It could be if you'd let it. The next evening, Elena changed her outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and a soft green sweater that Carmen said brought out her eyes. She taught her Wednesday class in a state of nervous anticipation, barely registering the students or their questions. By the time 9 o'clock arrived, she was wound tight with anxiety. Marcus was waiting in the diner's parking lot, leaning against a sleek black car that probably cost more than Elena made in 5 years. He had changed too, she noticed, swapping his clay-splattered clothes for dark jeans and a gray Henley that fit him perfectly. Hi, she said, suddenly shy. Hi yourself. They chose a booth near the back, away from the handful of other customers. A tired waitress took their order without comment. 2 coffees, 1 slice of apple pie, 1 of cherry. The fluorescent lighting was harsh, the booth's vinyl cracked and patched with duct tape. It was possibly the least romantic setting imaginable, and Elena couldn't remember the last time she had felt so alive. Tell me about your work, she said once their coffee arrived. What does a real estate developer actually do? Marcus wrapped his hands around his mug. We identify properties or land parcels with potential, acquire them, and then develop them into something more valuable. Commercial spaces, usually. Office buildings, retail centers, mixed-use developments. It's a lot of negotiation, planning, managing contractors, dealing with city officials. Sounds stressful. It can be, but it's also satisfying when everything comes together. When you see a vacant lot transform into a space where people work and gather and build their lives. He paused. I suppose it's not that different from pottery, actually. Taking something raw and shaping it into something meaningful. Elena smiled. That's a generous comparison. I make bowls, you make buildings. You do more than make bowls. You teach people to see their own creativity. That's valuable. Their pie arrived and they ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes. The cherry was too sweet, the apple perfectly tart. They traded bites, falling into an easy intimacy. My turn for questions, Marcus said. Why night classes? Why not teach during the day? Because I have to work during the day. The art supply store pays my actual bills. Pottery teaching is more of a passion project that happens to contribute a little income. You worked as a high school teacher before, right? Elena looked at him in surprise. How did you know that? The Arts Center has staff bios on their website. Yours mentioned you transitioned from public education. Transitioned is a polite way of putting it. I was let go during budget cuts. Arts programs are always first on the chopping block. She pushed her pie around her plate. I loved that job. I loved working with teenagers, watching them discover that they could create things. But the school system is broken, and I was just another casualty. You want to go back if you had the chance. I don't know anymore. I've been doing this for 3 years now. You get used to things. The freedom to set my own curriculum, to work with adults who actually choose to be there. There are benefits. She met his eyes. What about you? Do you love what you do? Marcus considered the question seriously. I used to. I built the company from nothing. Fresh out of college, I borrowed money from everyone who would lend to me and bought a small commercial property that everyone said was a terrible investment. I renovated it, leased it out, and used the income to buy the next property. 10 years later, I have a company worth several $100 million. Elena nearly choked on her coffee. Several $100 million, give or take. The point is, I achieved everything I set out to achieve. I proved everyone wrong who said I'd fail. But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I was doing it. It just became about the next deal, the next project, the next zero on the balance sheet. Is that why you showed up at a pottery class, looking for meaning? I showed up at a pottery class because I saw a beautiful woman laughing, and I hadn't felt anything real in so long that I didn't recognize the emotion at first. It took me 2 weeks to realize I was feeling hope. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. Marcus, too much. He asked with a slight smile. I'm not great at dating. I haven't actually been on a date in about 3 years. I'm probably coming on too strong. You haven't been on a date in 3 years, married to my work, as they say. What about you? One disastrous relationship that ended about a year ago. David was an investment banker who turned out to be excellent at investing in everything except our actual relationship. His loss, Marcus said simply. They stayed at the diner until 11, talking about everything and nothing. Elena learned that Marcus had grown up in foster care, that he had put himself through college working construction jobs, that he had a photographic memory for numbers, but couldn't remember people's names to save his life. Marcus learned that Elena had a younger sister named Carmen, that she had wanted to be an artist since she was 6 years old, that she had once driven across the country alone just to see the Pacific Ocean. When they finally left, Marcus walked her to her car. The parking lot was empty except for their 2 vehicles, the diner's neon sign flickering overhead. Can I see you again? Marcus asked. Outside of class, I'd like that. Friday, dinner somewhere nicer than a diner. The diner was perfect, Elena said. But yes, Friday sounds good. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. When their lips met, it was gentle and searching, a question and an answer all at once. Elena felt warmth spread through her chest, the kind of warmth that had nothing to do with the mild November night. Good night, Elena, Marcus said when they broke apart. Good night. She drove home in a daze, already composing the text to Carmen in her head. Her sister was going to be impossible about this, and Elena found she didn't care even a little bit. Their Friday date was at an upscale Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place where the waiters wore suits and the wine list was longer than the food menu. Marcus had made reservations weeks in advance. He admitted sheepishly, hoping Elena would eventually agree to go out with him. Confident were you? Elena teased, wearing a black dress she had borrowed from Carmen, more like desperately hopeful. The food was incredible, each course a small work of art, but Elena barely tasted it, too focused on the man across from her. Marcus told her about his current project, a massive mixed-use development on the waterfront that had been plagued with delays and budget issues. She told him about her dream of opening her own studio someday, a place where she could teach and create without the constraints of the community center's limited resources. "How much would that cost?" Marcus asked. "To open your own place," Elena shrugged. "More than I'll ever have. The space alone would be astronomical, plus equipment, supplies, insurance, permits. I'd need probably 200,000 to do it right." She noticed Marcus's expression change, becoming thoughtful. "What?" she asked. "Nothing, just thinking." "You have your business face on," he laughed. "Do I have a business face?" Very serious. "Like you're calculating numbers in your head." "Maybe I am." They left the restaurant and walked along the waterfront, Elena's hand tucked into Marcus's arm. The city lights reflected off the dark water, and a cool breeze carried the scent of salt and possibility. "I want to show you something," Marcus said, "if you have time." "It's only 10. Show me." He drove them to a warehouse district Elena vaguely recognized, pulling up in front of a large brick building with arched windows. Half the building was clearly occupied, lights glowing in renovated loft spaces. The other half sat dark and seemingly abandoned. "This is one of my projects," Marcus explained as they got out of the car. "The left side is finished, all residential lofts. The right side has been a problem. The original plan was more residential, but the market is saturated. I've been trying to figure out what to do with it." He unlocked a heavy metal door and led Elena inside. The space was raw and industrial, with exposed brick walls, soaring ceilings, and massive windows. It smelled of dust and age and potential. "Marcus, this is incredible," Elena breathed, turning slowly to take it all in. "The light in here during the day must be amazing. 20-foot ceilings, north-facing windows, about 5,000 square feet on this floor alone. There's another floor above, plus a basement." Elena walked deeper into the space, her footsteps echoing. Her mind was already transforming the emptiness, seeing pottery wheels arranged in natural light, shelves of glazes and tools, kilns in the basement where temperature control would be easier. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, though part of her already knew. Marcus came to stand beside her. "Because I want to invest in your dream. Let me help you open your studio." Elena's breath caught. "What, Marcus? No, that's insane. You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you're talented and passionate and that you'd make this space into something amazing. Consider it a business investment." "I can't pay you back, not for years, maybe not ever. I'm not asking you to pay me back. I'm offering you an opportunity." Elena shook her head, overwhelmed. "This is too much. It's too fast. We've been on 2 dates. You can't just give me a building." "I'm not giving you a building. I own the building. I'm offering you the space, rent-free for the first 2 years while you establish yourself. After that, we can negotiate fair market rent. And I'm willing to invest capital in the build-out and equipment as a business loan, interest-free, payable when and if the studio becomes profitable." "Why would you do this?" Marcus took her hands. "Because watching you come alive when you talk about pottery is the best part of my week. Because I have more money than I know what to do with, and I'd rather invest in something meaningful than buy another property I don't need. Because I want to see what you can create when you have the resources to match your vision." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. No pressure, no expectations. If you decide you're not interested personally or professionally, the offer still stands. This is about believing in your talent, not about buying your affection." She pulled her hands free and walked to the windows, looking out at the city lights. Part of her wanted to accept immediately, to leap at this impossible opportunity. But another part, the part that had been burned before, was cautious. "I need time," she said finally. "This is a lot to process." "Take all the time you need." They drove back to Elena's car in silence, the easy comfort of earlier replaced by tension. When they arrived, Elena turned to Marcus. "Thank you for showing me the space, and for the offer. I just need to think about it carefully." "Of course," Marcus said, but she could see the disappointment in his eyes. Elena didn't call Marcus over the weekend. She barely left her apartment, pacing and thinking and second-guessing everything. Carmen tried to talk sense into her on Sunday afternoon, bringing pizza and wine and sisterly advice. "Let me see if I understand this correctly," Carmen said. "A handsome, successful man who you're clearly attracted to wants to help you achieve your biggest dream, and you're worried about what exactly? About whether it's real. About whether he actually cares about me, or if I'm some kind of charity project. About what happens when things don't work out between us and I've built my entire career on his generosity." "Those are valid concerns," Carmen admitted. "But Elena, you've been struggling for 3 years, working 2 jobs just to make rent, putting your dreams on hold indefinitely. Someone is offering you a way out and you're too scared to take it." "I'm not scared. You're terrified. You've been terrified since David, since losing your teaching job. You're so afraid of being hurt or disappointed that you won't even reach for happiness when it's right in front of you." Elena knew her sister was right, but acknowledging it and acting on it were different things. She spent Monday rehearsing what she would say to Marcus at class on Tuesday. But when Tuesday evening arrived, Marcus wasn't there. Mrs. Patterson mentioned that Marcus had called to say he would be out of town on business for a few weeks. He had paid for the full session in advance, so his spot would be held. Elena taught the class in a fog of disappointment and confusion. She had pushed him away, and now he was gone. The weeks crawled by. Elena threw herself into work, picking up extra shifts at the art supply store. She taught her classes with mechanical efficiency, no longer finding joy in the process. She had ruined something good because of fear, and the realization ate at her. 3 weeks after their last conversation, Elena received a package at the arts center. Inside was a key and a note in Marcus's precise handwriting. "Elena, I'm sorry if I overwhelmed you. That wasn't my intention. I meant what I said about the studio space. Whether or not you want to see me personally, the offer stands. The key is to the warehouse. Go look at it again. Bring your sister. Bring a contractor. Do whatever you need to do to make an informed decision. No strings, no expectations. I just want to see you fly. Marcus." Carmen drove her to the warehouse that Saturday morning. In the 3 weeks since Elena had seen it, Marcus had done work on the space. The floors had been refinished, the windows cleaned, electrical work upgraded. There was a new bathroom in the corner, industrial but functional. The transformation was stunning, and he had done it all without any agreement from her, without any guarantee she would accept his offer. "Oh, Elena," Carmen breathed. "This is incredible." Elena walked through the space, imagining it filled with students and art and life. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus before she could talk herself out of it. He answered on the second ring. "Elena, where are you? Chicago, negotiating a deal. Is everything okay? I'm at the warehouse." "Marcus, you renovated it. Just the basics." "I figured if you didn't want it, I could use it for something else. Did you like what I did? It's perfect. But we need to talk. Really talk. Can you come back? I can be on a plane tonight, tomorrow morning at the latest. Come to the studio tomorrow, 2 o'clock. I'll be working on some pieces." She heard the smile in his voice. "I'll be there." Elena spent the rest of Saturday and all Sunday morning preparing. She opened the studio early, using the community center's equipment to work on pieces she had been planning for months. By the time Marcus arrived at 2, she had 3 vases in progress and clay under her fingernails. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much, but his face lit up when he saw her. "Hi." "Hi," Elena replied. "Come here, sit." She gestured to the wheel next to hers. Marcus sat, looking uncertain. Elena had centered a fresh lump of clay for him. "Put your hands on it," she instructed. "Like I taught you." He did, and Elena placed her hands over his, guiding the clay upward into a cylinder. They worked in silence, their hands moving together, creating something new from formless earth. "I was scared," Elena said finally. "You're right that I was scared. David hurt me badly. Losing my teaching job hurt me. I've spent 3 years feeling like a failure, like I made all the wrong choices. And then you showed up, offering me everything I wanted, and I couldn't trust it. I couldn't trust that it was real." "And now?" Marcus asked quietly, their hands still joined on the clay. "Now I think I've been so focused on protecting myself that I forgot how to actually live. You were right about something else too. I'm not dead. I'm 28 years old and I'm allowed to take chances." The clay rose between their palms, forming a tall, elegant vase. Elena guided Marcus through shaping the rim, creating a gentle flare. "I want to accept your offer," Elena said, "but I need some conditions. I want a formal business contract drawn up by a lawyer. I want to pay you back eventually with reasonable interest. I want this to be a real investment, not charity." "Done," Marcus agreed immediately. "And I want to keep seeing you, dating you, getting to know you without the warehouse and the business hanging over us. Can we do that? Can we separate the personal from the professional?" Marcus turned his head to look at her, their faces close together. "We can try. But Elena, I need you to understand something. I didn't offer you the warehouse because I want to date you. I want to date you because you're intelligent and talented and you make me laugh. The warehouse is separate. It's a good investment in a good person. Those two things don't have to be connected." "Everything is connected," Elena said softly. "But I'm willing to navigate it if you are." He kissed her then, heedless of the clay coating their hands, the spinning wheel, the vase taking shape between them. Elena kissed him back, tasting coffee and hope and the promise of new beginnings. They pulled apart to find their collaborative vase slightly misshapen but still standing. Marcus laughed, a genuine sound of delight that transformed his serious face. "Our first creation together," he said. "It's terrible." "It's perfect," Elena corrected. "It's perfectly imperfect, just like everything else in life." The next 3 months were a whirlwind of planning, paperwork, and passion. Elena worked with Marcus's lawyer to draw up contracts that protected both of them. She met with contractors and equipment suppliers, designing her dream studio with meticulous care. And through it all, she and Marcus built their relationship with the same careful attention, learning each other's rhythms and patterns. Elena learned that Marcus was terrified of heights, despite owning several high-rise buildings. That he couldn't cook to save his life, but made excellent coffee. That he was generous to a fault with everyone except himself. That he worked too hard and slept too little. That beneath his controlled exterior was a man desperate for connection and meaning. Marcus learned that Elena sang off-key in the shower. That she was stubborn and independent to a fault. That she cried at commercials but remained stoic during actual crises. That her hands were never completely clean of clay dust. That she hoarded art supplies like a dragon hoarded gold. That her laugh was the best sound he had ever heard. They had their first real fight in February, when Marcus tried to buy expensive kiln equipment without consulting Elena. She accused him of being controlling. He accused her of being too proud to accept help. They didn't speak for 2 days before Marcus showed up at her apartment with takeout and an apology. "I'm sorry," he said. "I get excited about the project and I forget that it's your dream, not mine. I need to let you make the decisions." "And I need to accept that you want to help," Elena replied. "I'm working on the pride thing. It's a process." They ate Chinese food sitting on her apartment floor, and Marcus told her about growing up in foster care, about never having anything that was truly his, about the drive that came from starting with nothing. Elena told him about her father's death when she was 12, about her mother's depression afterward, about learning to find stability in art when everything else felt chaotic. "We're quite a pair," Marcus said, lacing his fingers through hers. "Two people terrified of being hurt, trying to build something together." "The best things are always a little terrifying," Elena replied. The studio opened in April with a grand celebration. Carmen had invited half the city, or so it seemed. The space that had been empty and industrial was now warm and welcoming, filled with pottery wheels and shelves of supplies and artwork from local artists. Elena had named it Threshold Studio, for the liminal space between raw material and finished art. Marcus stood at the back during Elena's opening speech, watching her glow with pride and accomplishment. She thanked him publicly for his investment and support, careful to keep it professional even though everyone in attendance knew they were together. When she cut the ribbon officially opening the studio, the crowd applauded, and Marcus felt something shift in his chest. He had spent years building things that made money but meant nothing. Watching Elena achieve her dream, seeing the joy on her face and the admiration in her students' eyes, he finally understood what success actually looked like. It wasn't a bank balance or a prestigious address. It was this feeling, this bone-deep satisfaction of helping create something meaningful. The studio thrived from the beginning. Elena's reputation as a teacher drew students from across the city. She offered day classes, night classes, weekend workshops. She brought in guest instructors and hosted exhibitions. Within 6 months, Threshold Studio was operating in the black, exceeding even Marcus's optimistic projections. "I told you it was a good investment," he said one evening as they reviewed the quarterly financials together in Elena's office. "You did," she admitted. "I should have trusted you from the start. You trusted yourself. That's more important." They had dinner that night at the same diner where they had their first date, sitting in the same booth with the same terrible coffee and excellent pie. It had become their tradition, a reminder of where they started. "I love you," Marcus said suddenly, setting down his fork. "I know we haven't said it yet and maybe it's not the right time, but I need you to know. I love you, Elena. I love your passion and your stubbornness and the way you see beauty in everything. I love who I am when I'm with you." Elena felt her eyes fill with tears. "I love you too. I think I've loved you since you showed up to that first class looking like you'd rather be anywhere else but still completely determined to learn. I was terrible at pottery." "You're still terrible at pottery," Elena said with a laugh, "but you're excellent at other things." They kissed across the table, tasting like cherry pie and coffee and forever. Marcus proposed in September, exactly 1 year after he walked into Elena's pottery class for the first time. He did it simply, without fanfare or elaborate planning. They were in the studio after hours, Elena teaching him how to create a lidded jar. His hands were covered in clay, his jar was lopsided, and he looked at her and said, "Marry me." Elena nearly dropped the piece she was trimming. "What?" Marcus stood and pulled a small box from his pocket, revealing a simple platinum band with a small diamond. "Marry me, Elena. I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring things out, but I'm sure about you, about us. I want to build a life with you, not just a business." "Yes, Elena said without hesitation. Yes, absolutely yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, leaving clay smudges on her skin. They held each other in the fading afternoon light, surrounded by the studio they had built together, standing on the threshold of their future. The wedding was small and intimate, held in the studio surrounded by pottery and art and everyone they loved. Carmen cried through the entire ceremony. Mrs. Patterson from the pottery class made the cake. Marcus's business partner gave a speech about how love had transformed his workaholic friend into someone who actually took weekends off. Elena wore a simple white dress and bare feet, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. Marcus wore a navy suit and couldn't stop smiling. When they exchanged vows, Elena's hands were steady, all fear finally put to rest. "I promise to always support your dreams," she said. "To challenge you when you work too hard. To remind you that success isn't measured in deals closed but in moments shared." "I promise to let you lead," Marcus said. "To trust your vision. To build a life with you that's messy and imperfect and absolutely real." They honeymooned in Japan, visiting ancient pottery studios and temples. Marcus learned about traditional Japanese ceramics while Elena studied centuries-old techniques. They ate incredible food, got lost in Tokyo, and talked about their future. Children, maybe, when the time was right. A house with a studio attached. A life built on clay and love and mutual respect. 2 years into their marriage, Elena discovered she was pregnant. The news came as a surprise, though not an unwelcome one. She told Marcus over dinner at their house, a renovated craftsman they had bought together, complete with a backyard studio where Elena worked on personal projects. "I'm pregnant," she said, watching his face carefully. Marcus set down his wine glass slowly. "Are you sure? 3 tests worth of sure. Are you happy?" "Happy doesn't begin to cover it," he said, pulling her into his arms. "I'm terrified and thrilled and already worried about being a terrible father." "You're going to be an amazing father," Elena assured him. "You build things. We'll build this together." Their daughter was born in May, a spring baby with Marcus's gray eyes and Elena's dark hair. They named her Maya, after the Sanskrit word for illusion, for the magic of creation. Elena took 3 months off from the studio, spending her days learning to be a mother while Marcus rearranged his work schedule to be home more. He had sold a portion of his company the year before, bringing in a partner to handle day-to-day operations. It was Elena's idea, born from watching Marcus struggle to balance his workaholic tendencies with his desire to be present in their relationship. The decision had been difficult for him, but watching him cradle their newborn daughter, Marcus knew it was the right choice. Threshold Studio continued to grow, expanding into the 2nd floor of the warehouse. Elena hired additional instructors, allowing her to focus on advanced workshops and her own artistic practice. Her pottery began winning awards, being featured in galleries, but she never lost touch with teaching. The Tuesday night beginner class remained her favorite, a reminder of where everything started. 5 years after opening Threshold Studio, Elena finally paid off Marcus's investment plus interest. He had never asked for repayment, but she insisted, wanting to prove that his belief in her had been justified. They celebrated at the diner, sitting in their booth with their now 3-year-old daughter coloring on paper placemats. "I'm proud of you," Marcus said, watching Elena sign the final payment check. "I'm proud of us," Elena corrected. "None of this would have happened without you. You would have found another way. You're too stubborn not to, maybe, but I'm glad I didn't have to. I'm glad I had you." They had a 2nd child 2 years later, a son they named Leo, who inherited Marcus's serious demeanor and Elena's artistic temperament. Their house filled with noise and laughter and clay dust that never quite disappeared no matter how much they cleaned. Marcus learned to make pancakes shaped like animals. Elena learned to survive on less sleep than she ever thought possible. Through it all, they maintained their traditions. Date nights at the diner. Sunday mornings in the studio while the kids played with child-safe clay. Annual trips to new places to study different art forms and cultures. They fought sometimes, usually about Marcus working too much or Elena taking on too many projects, but they always came back to each other, remembering what they had built together. On their 10th anniversary, Marcus surprised Elena with a gift. It was a vase, poorly made and slightly lopsided, but glazed with care and obvious effort. "You made this?" Elena asked, turning it in her hands. "I've been taking secret lessons from your instructor, Sarah. I wanted to make something for you, something that showed how much you've taught me about patience and process and letting go of control." Elena set the vase down carefully and took Marcus's face in her hands. "It's perfect. You're perfect. This whole messy, chaotic, wonderful life we've built is perfect. Even when it's lopsided. Especially when it's lopsided." They kissed in their studio, their children playing nearby, the afternoon sun streaming through the tall windows. Somewhere in the building below, students were learning to center clay, to trust the process, to create beauty from earth and water and patience. Elena thought back to that first class, to Marcus sitting at the wheel looking determined and completely out of place. She had been so certain she had life figured out, that safety meant staying small, that dreams were for people with different circumstances. Marcus had taught her that love meant taking risks, that sometimes the best things came from the most unexpected places. "What are you thinking about?" Marcus asked, his arms around her waist. "About clay," Elena said. "About how you take something formless and ordinary, and with enough patience and care you transform it into something extraordinary." "Are we still talking about pottery?" "We're talking about everything. Pottery, life, us. It's all transformation. It's all magic if you let it be." Their daughter ran up then, holding a clay snake she had created. "Mama, look what I made." Elena knelt down to admire her daughter's creation, offering genuine praise and gentle suggestions for improvement. Marcus watched them, his heart full. He had spent his life building things, but this was his greatest achievement. Not the business or the buildings or the money in the bank. This family, this love, this life they had shaped together from nothing but hope and determination. That evening, after the children were asleep and the studio was quiet, Marcus and Elena sat on the floor surrounded by pottery in various stages of completion. They talked about the future, about expanding the studio again, about maybe writing a book together on the business of art, about taking a family trip to Italy the following summer. "You ever regret it?" Elena asked. "Taking that pottery class. I derailed your whole life." Marcus laughed. "You didn't derail anything. You put me back on track. Before you, I was just going through motions, making money for the sake of making money. You reminded me what actually matters. Clay and pie," Elena teased. "Love and purpose. Though the clay and pie are pretty great too." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind of quiet that comes from years of knowing someone completely. Outside, the city hummed with life and possibility. Inside, two people who had taken a chance on each other continued building their masterpiece, day by day, moment by moment, with the same patience and care Elena taught in every class. Years later, when Maya was old enough to ask how her parents met, Elena told her the story of the serious businessman who walked into a pottery class and changed everything. She told her about patience and trust, about taking chances on imperfect things, about how the best art comes from being willing to get your hands dirty and try something new. "Did Daddy get good at pottery?" Maya asked. Elena and Marcus exchanged a look and smiled. "He got good at showing up," Elena said. "And sometimes that's more important than being perfect." Marcus reached for Elena's hand, their fingers interlacing with the ease of long practice. The clay dust was still there, permanent reminder of how they started. And Maya, wise beyond her years, looked at her parents and understood something fundamental about love. It wasn't about grand gestures or perfection. It was about choosing someone and continuing to choose them, day after day, through the messy and the beautiful and everything in between. The story of Elena and Marcus became something of a legend at Threshold Studio. New students heard about the teacher who fell in love with a student who fell in love first. They heard about dreams built on belief and hard work, about taking chances when logic said to play it safe, about the magic that happens when you trust the process and keep your hands open to possibility. And on Tuesday nights, when Elena taught her beginner class to a rotating cast of hopeful students, she always remembered to tell them the most important lesson. Clay is forgiving. Life is forgiving. You can always start again, reshape what isn't working, try a different approach. The only real failure is being too afraid to put your hands on the wheel in the first place. Marcus would sometimes sit in on those Tuesday classes, ostensibly to work on his still mediocre pottery skills, but really just to watch Elena teach. To see her come alive the way she had that first day, he stopped outside the window and decided to take a chance. She would catch his eye across the room and smile, a secret smile just for him, and he would remember why he walked through that door 5 years ago, 10 years ago, eventually decades ago. The warehouse district transformed around them as the years passed. More businesses moved in, more development happened, but Threshold Studio remained constant. A place where magic happened, where earth became art, where a pottery teacher and an unlikely student proved that the best stories start with someone being brave enough to try something new. And if you visited the studio on any given day, you might see a couple working side by side at pottery wheels, their hands moving in practiced synchronization, creating beauty from formless clay. You might notice the way they looked at each other, the gentle touches and soft laughter that spoke of deep love and shared history. You might see their children playing nearby, already learning that art and life are inseparable, that what you build with your hands and heart becomes your legacy. Elena never regretted saying yes to that first date, that first kiss, that first leap of faith. Marcus never regretted walking through that studio door, signing up for a class he didn't need, putting himself in the path of someone who would change everything. They built a life as beautiful and imperfect as any handmade bowl, and they did it together, with patience and care and an endless supply of love. In the end, their story wasn't about a millionaire and a teacher. It was about two people who saw each other truly, who chose each other daily, who built something lasting from the raw materials of hope and courage and stubborn determination. It was about transformation, the kind that happens when you let yourself be molded by love, when you trust the hands shaping you, when you believe that broken things can be made whole and ordinary things can become extraordinary. And every Tuesday night, somewhere in a warehouse studio with tall windows and afternoon light, that story continued. New students arrived with nervous energy and hopeful hearts. Elena taught them about centering and balance, about pressure and release, about the patience required to create anything worthwhile. And sometimes, just sometimes, someone in the back row would watch her with unusual intensity, seeing not just a pottery teacher but a whole universe of possibility. Because that's the real magic of clay, Elena would say. It teaches you that everything is potential. A lump of earth can become a vase, a bowl, a sculpture, anything you can imagine. All it takes is vision, effort, and the willingness to get your hands dirty. The same is true of life, of love, of dreams deferred and chances taken. Everything is transformation. Everything is possible. You just have to be brave enough to try. Marcus squeezed Elena's hand as they locked up the studio late one Tuesday night, 30 years after he first walked through that door. Their hair was grayer now, their hands marked by time and work, but the love between them burned as steady as a kiln fire. They had built something beautiful together, something that would outlast them, something that mattered. "Ready to go home?" Elena asked. "Always," Marcus replied, "as long as home is wherever you are." They walked to their car through the quiet streets, hands linked, hearts full. Behind them, the studio lights dimmed. Above them, stars emerged in the darkening sky. And between them, the unbreakable bond of two people who found each other against all odds and chose to build something extraordinary from the raw materials of chance and courage and enduring love. The end.